Here to keep the chase going, share information, spread unity, preserve our heritage and our culture. We're trying to achieve something that you just can't catch. We're always trying to find a better way, trying to make better dogs. That's what Dixie Doggers Podcast is. That's who we are.
This episode is brought to you by Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company. Marc Rankin specializes in Brahma and Brahma Cross cattle in Oglethorpe County, Georgia. You can contact him at 407-832-2077. 407-832-2077. This episode is also brought to you by Phil Wilson of UC Hunting Properties. If you're buying or selling land, farms, or hunting property, these folks know land. You can contact him at 678-791-3483, 678-791-3483, or visit his website down below in the description.
All right, everybody. We are back one more time down here with the Dixie Doggers Podcast.
Yes, indeed.
We got Joey and Nate here on the horn with you, and we got Mr. Bob Plott on the horn with us. And tonight will be another segment of Strike and Stay with Mr. Bob Plott. And we got him on the line right here. Mr. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, fellas. How about y'all?
We are doing wonderful.
Doing good.
Beyond blessed.
Yes, same here, brothers. Always good to be with you guys, man. Love what you're doing.
Thank you. So how's everything going up your way? I know we've had y'all had a bunch of the stuff off the Hurricane Helene that come through. I didn't know how bad it got in y'all's area. I knew through North Carolina and South Carolina, all up through there was a lot of areas that were hit pretty hard. I just I know I messaged and checked on you, but how's everything going up that way?
Well, I appreciate you checking on us, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's really one of the first things I wanted. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I really wanted to mention this for a couple reasons. First of all, we're okay. We had probably a little more than a foot of rain and 60-mile-an-hour winds, but no real damage. But now folks a little bit nearest west of us. I mean, there were trees and stuff down here and some power, but nothing that bad. But and in the further deeper in the mountains, it was kind of weird. Places like Boone, Asheville, Black Mountain, Old Fort, Chimney Rock. Mm-hmm. There's places there are just gone. I mean, I'm talking about nothing's left. And then there's places like downtown Waynesville, Silva, Bryson City that they're just business as usual. But I was able to, Interstate 40 was closed. It's still actually westbound in Tennessee, still closed. But you can get into a day or two after the storm. You could get into some of these areas if you had, if kind of people knew who you were and you had supplies and stuff. So I took a couple loads of supplies in because I knew some people. I knew a family, a couple in Maggie Valley, for example, that 85-year-old couple that lost everything but the shirt on their back.
Oh, man.
And another friend of mine who's got a band, his mother lost everything again, her car, personal belongings, everything. And they insurance company and FEMA and the people came there to look at it. They said, well, can we take a picture of your house and what's left of it? And she said, there's a cinder block right there. That's it,
Oh, my goodness.
So there was a lot of places like that. I got another good friend in Mitchell County that's the road in his house is okay, but the road into his house on both directions and a bridge washed away. And a lot of places still don't have power or cell service. Some of them are just now getting it back. But, I tell people all the time, this is going to be, the race for getting this recovering for these people is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, we're going to have to. I think one thing I'm really worried about, guys, is that sometimes stuff like this happens, and especially if you're not living in the middle of it or a part of it, people kind of tend to forget about it after a while.
Yes, sir.
And this is just going to be one of those things that I think we're all going to have to keep these people in our prayers and donate where we can. And I'm not going to tell anybody to donate to a specific organization. You can do your own research and do that, or
That's right.
do like I've done and go out and find people that, I mean, one of the first things I did was contact every one of my family and friends and neighbors and relatives and, make sure they were okay. And thank God they were. But a lot of them had some damage, and a lot of them needed help. And so we've tried to give that as much as we can and encourage other people to do so as well. And I'm been really, really, excited or pleased, gratified, I think, probably the better word, to see how the communities pull together, especially the bear hunting community, the hound hunting community. Tennessee kill season just started in the 1st of October. North Carolina's already started. So you got a lot of bear hunters that have had to give up hunting time, but some of them didn't. There were plenty of areas. Graham County, for example, had virtually no damage. Swain County had virtually no damage. So there's a lot of great hunting areas that guys could be hunting in and are, but a lot of them are out donating their time and energy to get supplies into people using their 4-wheel drive vehicles or 4-wheelers or that sort of thing, So it's been really great to see that. And, and I've tried to stay away from the politics of it because a lot of people have tried to politicize it and say, well, so-and-so's not doing this or so-and-so's not doing that. All I can say from firsthand experience is that, people have really pulled together. I've seen plenty of outside assistance. I've seen even more local and regional assistance that just kind of shows me that, people here are doing what they've done generations and generations before and what they'll be doing for generations to come. So I would just say to anybody out there, if you can help out any of these organizations, by all means do so. Keep on helping out beyond now, because I mean, some of these places, I mean, you see things on TV and you go, gosh, that's terrible. And it is, but my gosh, when you see it up front, firsthand, in person, places that you've been, locations that well, that just aren't there anymore. I mean, they're just gone.
Yeah,
And
that's hard. It's hard to imagine that. Just the gut
it
punch
is.
it would be.
And it's just, there was just one buddy of mine lives in Madison County. There was like a 2-story apartment building that had 20 apartments in it. It was a real old structure that a guy had come in and redone and put some nice apartments in. It's a big building, I mean, huge building. And there's not a stick of it left. It's gone. And so, and there's still plenty of bodies that haven't been accounted for, at least 100, 200 people still reported as missing, and maybe more than that, because there's areas that they still just haven't gotten into yet. So my company, little company I run on the side, Mountain Memories Productions, we've got 3 benefit concerts scheduled where we're paying the bands to play and then giving proceeds or most of the gate or half the gate to flood relief. Okay. And so we're trying to do that. It's one of the things we're trying to do. And I think that's the other thing people forget about is even when you get power back and get because I mean, I'll give some of these guys credit, man. There's some roads back in place now that I thought would take months to get back in that are already operational again.
Yeah.
But, the economic aspect of it is something I think people lose sight of, because Western North Carolina in particular, East Tennessee too, is such a tourism-driven, industry. So many people really depend their economy on their economic well-being depends on visitors coming in and spending money at their businesses, and whether it be a fly fishing guide or, a restaurant or whatever. So when they lose that business for 3 months, you can't get that back. And they've got employees they've got to pay, they've got benefits, they've got supplies. And so, I really worry about those people too, because there's just, how you going to help them when there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much that the government or anybody else can do, because it's just the business sitting there and people can't get to it. What can you do? And
that's
so,
right.
yeah, so it's, but 40 now is open all the way into right at the Tennessee line. So, anybody coming west can at least get up in that part of the country, and you can cut across 441, and there's several other ways in that you can get it. But that's the other thing too. While you want to encourage people to come to the areas that are accessible, you really don't want them getting in the way either.
That's right.
Because it's like there's so many things going on that you don't want to, stress out the existing infrastructure in trying to keep things going. So I just tell people that, send money, send donations. Right now, like we talked about earlier, it's getting cold. They already had snow in some of the high elevations. And so, send blankets, gloves, coats, anything that keeps people warm is of the utmost. Generators, that sort of stuff is something that's still just badly, badly needed. And just help out if you can. Definitely keep them in your thoughts and prayers, because it's something that's going to be going on for a long, long time. And I just hope there's not. I'll say this and shut up about it. There's hope that there's not. My biggest concern right now is what if another storm comes in on top of this? Because we had 2 back to back. That was another thing that really hurt us. We had the first one, Helene, I guess it was, and then the second one came in. We got aftermath of it, not as bad, but enough to where I may have them in the wrong order. But anyway, there was 2 within a couple weeks. So that was, really made a bad situation worse too. In some of these areas, the flooding is worse than what people that I know, 90 years old, so they'd never seen anything like that. And this is an area that's seen some flooding, some bad flooding in the past 5 or 6 years, but nothing like this. It's just mind-boggling.
There's so many people that they don't think about the mountainous regions and flooding.
Right.
They just don't, that it's almost like that doesn't coincide in a lot of people's thoughts, because even myself, I was like, man, it happened so fast. But like where we live in the foothills. And if you get a real hard rain for a good hour and a half, I mean, we live at the bottom, and it will flood that little creek that runs right behind our house, Charlie Branch. It'll come out of its banks. It'll be out in our yard in no time. So I couldn't imagine having a 1.5 foot of water dump out like that. It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's so true. And imagine the power of it, because now you're talking about a river coming down, start maybe originating at 6,000 foot elevation,
right?
And by the time it gets to a 2,500 elevation, it's like a darn tsunami wave or something,
That thing's got some speed and power.
Yeah, it's got power, and it comes up fast. And the other thing people forget about too, and I'm no biologist or scientist, but when you go in the mountains, and I'm sure you've seen them a million times, you always see those signs, crossing the Eastern Continental Divide, and what that means, of course, is that every river going on this side of it is going to the Gulf of Mexico, and another river on the other side of it's going to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, depending on which side that storm hits, if it hits mostly on one side versus the other, then that one side is going to get a whole lot more, for obvious reasons, get a whole lot more power than if it's evenly distributed on both sides.
That's right.
So people forget about that too. And, when that flood came through back when Canton and Clyde and Crusoe were just destroyed virtually 4 or 5 years ago, that came because the storm focused on the one side of it and didn't almost the other side. The Gulf Coast side didn't get hardly hit at all. So in this case, that was a problem. The storm was so big and lasted so long that both sides got hit pretty equally. But again, it was there was almost a line from like the Waynesville area, Maggie Valley, on into Old Fort, down in really the foothills, and Chimney Rock in that area, which is just gone. Chimney Rock's just gone, basically.
Wow.
And it was kind of just depending on where you were. In that one area that was just kind of ground zero, Black Mountain, Swannanoa, Asheville, where in Madison and Mitchell County, Boone over in Newland, Watauga County, and Avery Nash County. They just got devastated, man. Like I say, it's going to be years before some of this gets back to where it is. And like I say, some of these people are losing jobs and economy, and just a little stuff you think about musicians that make their living playing music. Well, now they don't have anywhere to play, and their gigs got canceled. And I know two guys that are musicians and teach music at a music school. Well, the school shut down, so they got no income coming in there, and they got no income coming in from their musical gigs, and they usually do pretty good. So,
and the economy was already not the best, Now we got this, and that my heart goes out to them.
They got sent $750.
Yeah, that's
they're going to get sent $750.
Well, hey man, thank you so much, because and like I say, that I can't stress strongly enough how gratifying and grateful I've been to see people do just what you're talking about doing. The Cataloochee Ranch in Maggie Valley, where I do a lot of programs, they're open and they're doing fine.
Yeah, I was referring to what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had said, what they were going to send the victims of the Hurricane Helene. Well, they were discussing only sending $750, and I was like, yeah, that's nowhere near enough.
Well, you're right, and I think, again, not trying to get into that side of it, but the thing about it is, the people that don't understand about FEMA is $750 is all you can get starting out. Now, you can get more than that after you get the grant money and coming in, but you got to go through all that process, which is just that, a process. So, it's not like anybody can. I wish they could, and I guess I don't know how it works. I don't want to get in the politics of it, but it seems to me like that if somebody could say, okay, we're just going to waive that 750 rule, but that 750 rule has been in place for, not just in this administration, but in administrations for years and years before. And again, I'm not supporting that. I'm just saying that's the way it is.
Yeah, but like you said, we get into the politics of that, it'll be a
well, and it's like I tell people too, man, look, this is not, I think we probably all feel a lot the same way about that, but that's irrelevant now. Right now you got to focus on helping each other, and it don't matter, what your last name is, what color you are, what religion you are.
That's right.
What church you go to, or what party you vote for. It just don't matter. This is about helping each other. And I think that's one thing is, whenever you turn on the TV, all you see is just people sniping at each other. This was different. This is people now saying, it's kind of remind me of how it was after 9/11. The day after the 9/11 tragedy, you start seeing people from all parties pulling together.
That's right.
And that was a lot of what I'm seeing now. Now there's still idiots out here. There's armed militia members coming to, attack FEMA, and it's like, okay, you want to cuss them out for not being here, but then when they are here, you want to try to shoot them. So
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So again, not supporting FEMA. I'm just saying that this is where logic's got to come into it. You know what I'm saying? That's
where the common sense factor has to be there. And the tenacity of the human spirit, especially of Appalachia. I mean, you're not going to beat those people. No. You're not going to hurt. I mean, you might knock them down, but I promise you're not going to keep them down.
No, sir. And that's what's so gratifying to see is people pulling together just like their fathers and grandfathers, grandmothers, great, so on and so forth, have done before them. And what I believe their kids and grandkids and our grandkids and great grandkids will be doing in generations to come, I hope. So
I believe so.
So that part of it, is gratifying. And so, like I said, I'll leave it at that. But I just, again, I want to give a shout out to especially the hunting community for, a lot of these guys got 4-wheel vehicles and, side by sides or there's even people even brought mule trains in to get stuff into people. Yeah. So to do that, man, that really says a lot about the hunting community, especially when you have such a small window to hunt in, and a lot of these places they were okay and could go hunting, so they chose to go out and help their fellow man rather than do something they love doing and only get to do a few weeks out of the year. So, I salute
that's
them
good.
and salute everybody, man, for doing that, and can't thank them enough. And just really, like I say, encourage people to um, keep on, because it's going to, I mean, next year, this time, we'll still be saying, hey, we're better, but we're not where we need to be yet. So don't forget about us.
That's right.
And so that's kind of where we are. But
Right.
but I appreciate you guys making it up and giving me the opportunity to mention that, because I did want to mention that anyway. And again,
Well, good deal.
support whoever you can, however you can, whatever you see fit. I think you'll be helping somebody for sure.
That's right. That's the best. Honestly, that's the best way to do it. That's the best advice that I have found myself. Just if help however you can, and it'll get to someone.
Yeah.
So someone will benefit from it, and it doesn't have to be one particular thing over this one. There doesn't have to be any politics in it. Just out of the kindness of your heart, if you feel it, feel it on you to help, then help. Just do your own research and find something that you feel that you feel works for you. So and I want people to understand that we're not trying to push no certain thing on anybody. The thing we're trying to promote here is just help your fellow man all you can.
No, that's me, man. I mean,
that's right.
That's all it's about, and all it should be about right now. I mean, we can, we got an election coming up in a couple of weeks. We can all vote how we want to then, and we better.
We better. You better get off your butt and go do it. There ain't no doubt.
Exactly. But I mean, in the meantime, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about helping these people now, because they need help now. They don't need help when, whoever the next president is that gets in that may do better or may do worse or whatever, or the same one stay in, whatever the case may be. I'm not debating that. I'm just saying that, we can help each other. And, we all know people that know somebody legitimately. One thing that gets lost in some of this sometimes, everybody hears this rumor, but when you know people who legitimately, them firsthand, that have lost everything they owned, that's people that if I can help, I want to help, because I know where that money's going to.
Yep.
That's right. And obviously you can't sit there and know every single person that's gone through this, because it'd be impossible. But there's certainly enough ways. I know you guys hunt with a lot of people in Western North Carolina. You know people.
Yes, sir.
I guarantee you, if you reach out to any of them and say, "Hey, tell me somebody that needs some help," they can tell you.
That's exactly right.
And somebody that legitimately needs it, and that it's going to the right place. So that's all I would suggest, is that, and however, like you say, wherever your heart leads you to do it. And I mean, I had an old bear hunter buddy of mine. I won't mention his name because he'd get mad if I did. But he called me up from Eastern North Carolina and said, "What can I do? I got some money I want to send." I said, "Whatever you send, I'll match it, and I know where it can go." And he did, and we did. We were able to buy some appliances for this old couple, that's lost everything. So
wow, that's good.
So, it's stuff like that, and just little things, being able to you got a truck and can take a load of water in, or that sort of stuff, man. People need it.
Yeah,
they will keep needing it too.
It's the simplest things, like you said, just a good drink of clean water, or a change of clothes, or some toothpaste, toilet paper, anything. Like they don't have anything.
No, something warm to wear, man. I mean, all of a sudden you're going from a storm hits, it was 85 degrees, and the next week it's 35 degrees, and starting to get snow in the high elevation. So
it's pretty tough.
And it's not just there either. I mean, you look down in Florida, and we got a lot of hunters and houndsmen in Florida too, and
that's right.
They got hit awful hard. Georgia, a lot of places, not just where we are. So I don't want to give that impression either.
It's all it made a swipe, and then Florida got, what was it? Milton came right behind that one.
Yeah, Milton. I couldn't remember the name of it.
That was it. Those two back to back, and they went about the same path, didn't they?
Yeah, that was the bad part about it. It was just So I mean, it's like a double whammy before you could even recover. Within 2 weeks, the next one comes right behind it.
We went through that in when was it? In 2011, we had a tornado outbreak. It was April of 2011, and it was bad. We had some come through at 5 a.m. that morning, and then at 6 p.m., same exact. I mean, within a mile of each other. We had 70. I want to say it was 73 tornadoes on the ground that day here in
Yeah.
Alabama.
There's more than that.
Was it?
It was 270.
I thought it was 73.
It was
I was talking
nearly
about like
300.
the F. They were F3 or bigger.
F5, yeah, like major, like
yeah. Anyway,
it was one of like the biggest
horrible.
tornado phenomenons. Because I took
it took years
a college course and we covered meteorology.
Yeah.
And the guy, he was a big tornado guy, and he was like, "All right, so we know about April 12th." And he was like just going on and on. He's like super into it. So.
Yeah, it was. It took Nathan and them's whole school. I mean, the little city of Cordova. It literally, like you said, it was gone. There was the whole downtown. Everything that was there was just gone. It just really. And like you said a while ago, until you stand there and physically see it, you really don't. You don't really grasp the full content of it. You just can't. I mean, you like to say, man, it's bad, and it is bad. And
it is.
And you can tell it. But like you said, if you know a place and you've been through there 1,000 times and you pull up and it's just completely gone, it's really gut-wrenching. I
mean, there's places where the river's going in a different direction now.
That's insane. That is just crazy.
I mean, it's just it is, and you mentioned tornadoes. Y'all familiar with that? That was something that happened with this storm too. Yes. You don't see many tornadoes in the mountains, but here, right in the middle of this storm, a bunch of F1 tornadoes hitting the mountains.
Yeah.
On top of that, so yeah, it's crazy. It's just no other way to put it. Like you said, insane's the right word.
And all the hunters out there that are helping. And not just on that part of it, but look at how it's going to rearrange their hunting grounds, their territories in that area, and the animals. They're going to be displaced. It's going to change so much stuff. Yeah, I mean,
and I'm glad you brought that point up too, because there's just every time I turn on a computer, there's videos of these camps where kind of people are staying, or whether they've got camps set up to distribute food. And they're one of the big problems they've got now. Bears are coming in there trying to get the food. Yeah,
because I mean, the animals don't have nothing. It wiped out everything. Yeah,
and then you talk about bears in particular depend on a mass crop, and when all the trees are gone or washed away, and so it's one of those things. It's that domino effect. You don't really think. I mean, you think about, oh gosh, it's awful. Somebody lost their house. Somebody lost their car or their clothes, and it is. Worse yet, somebody loses. I mean, one family lost 11 people out of their one family.
Oh my God.
So I mean, you hear stuff like that, and it is. But then you just think about all this other stuff, that kind of domino effect down the line that just kind of trickles down, that you don't even think about from the economy standpoint, the hunting standpoint. And I mean, again, the economy there too. Look at the people that can't come into this region and bear hunt now, that normally buy out of state licenses or rent rooms and buy food at restaurants and supplies and that type of thing that just won't happen this year.
Yeah. So there's so many things. Like, I mean, the houndsmen that I know a lot of guys that do training. They train bear hounds. So I mean, they're not going to be able to do that.
No,
for at least this year for sure. So like you said, the economic impact on it is it's astronomical.
Yeah, it's tremendous. It really is.
It is. So, but I mean, like I said, our thoughts and prayers out to all the victims and all the workers that are there. Whether you're working with FEMA or you're working elbow to elbow with your neighbor, hey, we love you. We're thinking about you, and our thoughts and prayers are with you guys.
Yes.
Amen. Couldn't have said it better. Appreciate that.
So, well, all right. Well, you said earlier when you and I were talking, you wanted to talk about the Big Five.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to start out with today?
Yeah. Well, let's do that. I think in some of our past couple of shows, we talked about focus more on the origin story of the breed, as far as, when it might have come from Germany and the early days when it got to America. And we talked about some things about the buckskin controversy and stuff as well. But one thing I want to talk about tonight, I thought might be appropriate, is this group of men, or 5 men, that we call the Big Five. And The Big Five are generally, most people who know anything about Plott hounds agree pretty much with his assessment that there were, certainly there were hundreds, if not thousands of people that have played a big part in the dog gaining recognition and getting registered in 1946. But 5 people in modern day history, and it's kind of, I say modern day history because some of these guys were actually born in the late 1800s, but we're still talking about 20th and 21st century history, come from this Big Five. And I'm not sure who coined the name Big Five. I know when I wrote my first book, it just made sense to me to call it that. And I don't know whether I heard it somewhere or whether I probably wasn't smart enough to make it up. So, somebody told me, I don't know. But anyway, I got a whole chapter in the book, the first book, Strike and Stay, called The Big Five. And I talk about those 5 individuals. And those 5 individuals were John Plott, who was the oldest son of Montraville Plott. And Montraville, was dead by 1924, but, he had a bunch of sons that were all great bear hunters, and I've written about them in my books too. And of course, Montraville himself killed 211 bears with a black powder pistol.
Wow.
Single shot black powder pistol, and his wife Julia killed a wolf with a frying pan one time. So these were pretty hardy people. So the wolf made a mistake of tearing into her laundry, and she had to teach it a lesson.
Wow.
But anyway, she and Mont had, I'd have to go back and look, but numerous sons, and all of them went on to in some degree or the other, play a big part in the Plott dog world. But 2 most notable ones were Vaughn Plott, of course, and John Plott. And they were kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Vaughn was the youngest son. He was born in 1896. John was the oldest son, and he was born in 1876 or thereabouts. They were both born in Haywood County on Plott Creek. And they were just really two just polar opposite people. And I'll talk a little bit more about each one of them, but I'll give you the name of all 5 of the Big Five members first. So that's your first 2, Vaughn and John Plott. Then you've got Isaiah Kidd, who was born in West Virginia, and a real interesting guy. He was born in, I think, 1882 and died in 1967. And really, really super interesting guy. He and Gola Ferguson were a lot alike in that their ability to understand genetics. And of course, Gola Ferguson is another one of the Big Five, and he was born in 1887 and he died in 1962. And then the 5th member of the group was Isaiah Kidd, and he was born in 1882, died in 1967. No, I'm sorry, I said Kidd. I should have said Taylor Crockett, excuse me. Okay. Crockett was born in 1908. He was the youngest of the group and died in 1996, I believe it was. So that was your 5: Taylor Crockett, John and Vaughn Plott, Isaiah Kidd, and Gola Ferguson. So we'll talk a little bit about each one of them. I go into real detail about all these guys in more detail. We won't have time, of course, to do it tonight, but we'll try to hit on a few highlights. Okay. And we'll start with John and Vaughn. As I said, they were the sons of Montraville and Julia Plott, Vaughn being the youngest brother, born in 1896, John being the oldest brother. John being the oldest brother in 1876, Vaughn in 1896. Vaughn I think he had a 3rd grade education at most. John, on the other hand, was pretty well educated. He was something of a ladies' man. He was married, or wasn't married. He had a woman pregnant and moved to Kansas in the early 1900s, and supposedly had another woman also in the community pregnant, whose father was after him with a shotgun. So he kind of left Haywood County pretty quickly. and went to Kansas. And so when he got to Kansas, he married his first wife, and she, of course, was the mother of little George Plott and Grace Plott. And little George Plott, who was killed in World War II, he would have probably been the sixth member of the Big Six had he not died so young in 1944. We'll talk about him next month in our December show because he died on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
But anyway, they were, just I said, just completely opposite as brothers could be. They were 20 years apart in age. John had went to Kansas, and you might say, well, why did he go to Kansas? Well, his brother, one of his other brothers, Robert Ellis Plott, had moved to Kansas early on and had developed several really big businesses there in Kansas and Texas. So John went out there and worked with him. And later there's pictures in all my books and in different types of publications over the years of the Plott brothers going to Kansas, and they would go elk hunting and antelope hunting in Colorado quite a bit. So Robert he had some Plott dogs, wasn't as a notable breeder as his brothers, but he was a pretty good hunter too. So John went out there to be with him, work with him, stayed there till his two children were, school age children or thereabouts. And then he returned to North Carolina sometime around 1921, something like that. And by that time, Montreville, his father, was sick, and so John was coming back with the idea of probably taking over the farming operation and some of the dogs too, which Vaughn resented because by that time he had taken over his father's pack. He felt like even though he was younger, he deserved it. And so there was a lot of friction between them. They lived only a few miles apart in their adult life, but would go for 20 years and not speak to each other. I mean, they just did not get along at all.
Wow.
So John was fascinated with, when he got back to North Carolina, he decided that he didn't feel like Vaughn was taking the dogs in the right direction. I don't think that was fair, but that's how he felt. And he then felt like he wanted to go back and get some of the other earlier blood that had been in line. In the late 1800s, Montreville Plott had bred what they called a lep hound, which is kind of a Catahoula leopard hound type. It was a spotted type dog. A guy named Elijah Crow down in Rabun Gap, Georgia, had this pack of these lep hounds, and they were just ferocious hunting dogs. And so Mont bred a Plott dog to had a couple litters of a combination half lep hounds, half Plott hounds, and he was very pleased with the results. And the Reese family, who lived out in Sunburst, North Carolina, in Haywood County, they were just notable hunters too, and they loved them, man. I've got a picture of them with them, and a lot of the Reeses took some of these dogs with them to Washington State early on in the 1900s. But anyway, when John got back, he decided he wanted to try to track down some of that, what he called old blood, and he managed to find some leopard Plott crosses that were still around in Transylvania County. And he found some of the older dogs that some of the Evans family had over in Cherokee County, that type of thing. And anyway, he brought them back and started breeding them in. If you look in pretty much any of the publications, you'll find there's a picture. One of the first dogs registered early on was Plott's lip, and it was a spotted-looking Plott dog. Well, Vaughn hated that. He just did not think that was, he felt like a Plott dog ought to be brindle or black saddleback or buckskin, one of the three, or maybe a blue merle. But that blue merle buckskin should be the minority. Predominantly brindle should be what you're looking for. And John had some beautiful brindle dogs, don't get me wrong, but he liked that lep dog too. So there was a lot of controversy there. And so, but it was kind of a competition. As little George, the son, grew older, he was able to kind of bridge that gap between his father and his son and his uncle, because they both loved him. And of course, that led later on to the 1935 Branch Rickey hunt that we all know about, where Branch Rickey came into Hazel Creek and they jumped like 20 some bears and killed 5 or 6. Wow. And that made national headlines, made, sporting news magazines all over the country. So that gave the breed a lot of recognition. Well, in the meantime, while this is going on, you got these other 3 Big 5 members. Gola Ferguson, who was living over in Swain County at that time. Gola was a really kind of a Renaissance type guy. He was the sheriff of Swain County, later became a state legislator. His wife was the jailer of the jail while he was the sheriff. And he was a great storyteller. He could pretty much anything he set his mind to, he could do. And he built violins, just did a whole lot of really, really cool stuff. And he obtained dogs he was born in 1887 outside of Bryson City. And he went to Western Carolina. He met Jurdy. He met one of the Plott guys, Plott's relatives. Talked to them about some dogs. I think it was Sam Plott, maybe. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at that. But at any rate, Gola was really looking for developing his own type of dogs. He wanted to be Plott hounds, but he really felt like that he wanted to try to really get the original stock and kind of build it. So he got his first dogs most likely from Mont Plott in the early 1900s, and then he also brought in some original stock from the Cable family and from the Blevins family, which were 2 really renowned hunting families, and we could do a whole program just on those 2 families. Okay. And so anyway, like most of these old time guys, he believed survival, of the fittest. We bred the best of the best. And by the early 1920s, he had started to get some really, really good dogs. People were starting to recognize them. And the 2 of the best were Boss and Tig. And by most everybody that we can determine, there was a doctor in Haywood County named Joshua Fannin Abel. And Abel had a breed of dogs named after him. They're called the Abel Hounds. It was mostly a big, burly black dog, great big game dog. And the Abel dog, so Gola took one of his Plott hounds he'd got from Mont Plott and Sam Plott, and he bred a Plott hound to an Abel dog and a Blevins dog, or basically the end result was you had a dog that was half Plott and a quarter Abel and a quarter Blevins. And that became the foundation stock basically for Boss and Tig. And I think it was, Boss was a big, heavy boned saddleback, a lot bigger than Tig. Tig was a smaller kind of gray brindled dog. And he said that these were the 2 best strike dogs he had ever had. And he referred to Boss and Tig as his 5-star general dogs. And if you look at the nearly 100 Plott hounds that were originally registered in 1946, it's crazy to think that 80 or more of them originated from those dogs.
Man.
So
yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, pretty big deal. So these guys all knew each other. So then you've got Taylor Crockett, who was the youngest of the group. Like I said, he was born in 1908 in Stony Point, Tennessee. His family later moved to Kentucky, then came at the end of World War I. They moved to Black Mountain, and then after that, they came to Waynesville. Interestingly enough, Crockett's father, who was a preacher, preached the funeral for Montreville Plott when he died in 1924. So Crockett obtained his first 2 Plott hounds from Samuel Plott, who was another son of Montreville's, who took dogs down to Georgia. He was a career Army man, really interesting guy. So Crockett was a great athlete. He was a boxer, a football player. He played football at Brevard, and legend has it that he often wore football cleats hunting so he'd have better traction when he was running the trails. And even when he was an old man, there were people that just said that, nobody could stay with him. He loved hunting more than anybody alive, especially hog hunting. That's where he differed with Vaughn and Gola and John, in that he loved hog hunting as much as he loved bear hunting, and hunted that area over around Cherokee County. And he went over there finding some of the Evans and Phillips stock to breed in with the Plott hounds, because he wanted a dog in his mind, the Crockett hound. He wanted it to Crockett Plott. He wanted it to have be more of a muscular fighting dog, so to speak. He wanted to have a lot of grit. He didn't really care that much about the nose. He didn't care about striking a 2-day trail, being a real cold-nosed dog. He was looking more for just grit and tenacity. So he got some, and his stock was normally they had more of a pancake ear, thicker chested, thicker head. Vaughn Plott used to kid him. I've got letters that he and Vaughn had written back and forth to each other. Crockett called Vaughn's dogs old bloodhounds, and Vaughn called Crockett's dogs old bulldogs, So, but they were good friends. I mean, I got a real hilarious letter from the 1930s where Crockett was writing them planning this hunt with him and telling him to make sure he brought something to drink with him. He couldn't afford to provide liquor for him. So, so just all that sort of stuff. But by the start of World War II, Crockett was already 33 years old, but he was still drafted and went in the Army, and he was highly decorated. I think he got 2 Purple Hearts, served in North Africa and Sicily and Italy. But while he was in the Army, he really decided to make up his mind that if he made it through the war, when he got back, he was going to really focus on getting the Plott hound back, or his mind of what he wanted a Plott hound to be. And so, of course, World War II was tragic for John Plott, too, in that his son, Little George, was killed December 24th, 1944. And so John was never the same after that, but he continued to raise the dogs until he died in 1959. And of course, Little George had given his father permission to sell half his pack to Hack Smithdeal, and Hack Smithdeal over in Tennessee had raised them as well and did quite well with them too. So now you've got Gola, Ferguson, you got John and Vaughn on the scene, and Taylor Crockett on the scene. And so now we're taking up to about the end of World War II, and Crockett got back, just like he said, and he got 3 pups from the Evans family, or from Paul Cheek, that had a lot of the Phillips Evans stock he was looking for and some of the cable stock that he was looking for. And the combination of this foundation stock led to probably one of Crockett's best dogs, was Crockett's Leo. And you've seen pictures of him, I'm sure, all over. So he was a gentle dog, but he was just a fierce fighting, and particularly with boars. And these Crockett hounds, like I said, they had no real houndy traits at all. They were just really ferocious, aggressive fighters, and they didn't have a ball mouth like most of the other Plott hounds do. They're had that chop mouth, real short staccato type bark. So some of his other famous dogs were Crockett's Red and Rusty and Gray Boy. There's several Gray Boys, but there was the original Gray Boy was one of his most famous. So later Crockett moved over into Macon County, lived there the rest of his life, and lived up until 1996. But he really felt like that and Crockett played a big role in getting a lot of the national forest and hunting lands over there developed that without his help probably wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
So back to Isaiah Kidd now. Kidd was the fifth member of the group, and he was the only member of the group who did not die in North Carolina. He was born December 11th, 1882 in Beckley, West Virginia, and he had started hunting quite a bit when he was a young man, and but he never had really, he had seen some brindle bear dogs. He didn't really know if they were Plott dogs or not. At the time, he was unaware of Plott hounds. But kind of like Ferguson, he was really in a kind of a Renaissance man. He was a carpenter. He was a building contractor. He was a sheriff like Ferguson was at one point. In 1925, he was a sheriff of Raleigh County. He held that office until 1929. And he was a real good fellow, really good-natured, good storyteller. So in 1927, he was dealing with a lot of stress being a sheriff, and Kidd's wife encouraged him to take some time off to relax a little bit. And so he had heard that there was some really good bear hunting and bear dogs in North Carolina. So he traveled to the Slick Rock area in western North Carolina near the Tennessee border over around Graham County. And he wanted to see if he could kind of test his skills. And while he was there, he met a game warden by the name of Cody Plott, who was a son of David Plott, who was, of course, directly related to Henry Plott and Montreal Plott and that group. But he was out of Maggie Valley. So anyway, when Cody got introduced, Cody then introduced Kidd to Vaughn Plott, George Plott, and John Plott. And Kidd developed a really strong relationship with the brothers, particularly with Vaughn. And so Kidd obtained his first dogs from Vaughn Plott, probably got a couple from John Plott too. And he later told Frank Meffin that he also had bought a Plott hound from L.M. Patton of Iowa, which is really the same thing as getting one from Vaughn, because that's where L.M. had gotten his dogs from, was from Vaughn. So anyway, eventually Kidd came back to North Carolina. He got to know Gola Ferguson, some other notable old time hunters, and a lot of people believe he got some dogs from Gola Ferguson too. So now, here's a guy that's got bloodlines from really the most important people in Plott hound history.
He's got the best of the best.
Yeah, and kind of like Kidd, he's had a really, really keen understanding of genetics. He didn't have a lot of formal training as a genetics expert, but there was a book out at that time. A lot of people, I've still got a copy of it. A lot of people still go by it. It's a great book. It's called The New Art of Breeding Better Dogs. And it's by Philip and Kyle Onstott, Onstott. And he kind of used that as his roadmap. It can be kind of a bewildering book to read at times, but it's very, very detailed, very, very analytical. And Kidd had that type of approach, that type of mindset where he could do that type of thing. His wife, they say, was probably better at keeping records than he was, and thanks to her, they were able to keep just very strict records on their pedigrees and that type of things, which helped them develop that stuff too. So really for the next 40 years after that, Kidd became arguably the finest dog breeder of that era. So, but it's hard to say that, in his dogs, again, every one of these dogs you could go through, famous dogs, Kidd had Kidd's Crying Sam. Gosh, there was just so many other, some of them, Kidd's Daisy, Kidd's Rock, Jeff, Old Bell, Crying Sam, Brindle Boy, were just, amazing dogs, all of them. Most everybody if you go back and look at a lot of the dogs today, a lot of dogs came from those bloodlines.
Yes.
But he died in 1967. Like I said, the other 5 members. One other thing he did that was real important too. Back during the buckskin controversy, Kidd got together with Von Plott, John Plott. I'm sorry, he got together with Von Plott at Plott Creek and several other Midwestern breeders to talk about the correct breed standard. He wanted to make sure that the buckskin was included into the breed standard and make sure that it was done correctly. So I think that was in 1963. So
Okay.
so he was very, and again, not to beat a dead horse on that, but that's one reason I'm so adamant. Not only do you have all this documentation to prove the buckskin was legitimate, here you got guys like Isaiah Kidd, Von Plott, Gola Ferguson, you know, the list goes on and on of guys that were still alive at that time when they made this decision to be it. None of these guys were consulted, or if they were, their opinions were ignored.
Yes.
So anyway, that kind of, set the stage for that. So you've got all these guys, Kidd, I told you about some of his dogs, told you about some of Crockett's dogs. Ferguson, let me go back and look and see if I can find, one of Ferguson's dogs, one of Ferguson's great, well, we not talked about Boston Tig, but there was another one of Ferguson's dogs that he felt was his all-time best dog, and that was a dog whose name was Jap. And Jap, unlike most of Ferguson's dogs, was completely black with brindle legs. And he had really unusual kind of reddish colored eyes. And I think I told you that story last time when at the time Gola Ferguson and Hub Plott had come back from hunting, and Jap had got up under that guy's bear hide and about castrated him as a pup.
Yeah.
And Gola said he knew then that was going to be a good dog, even though he'd never it's a bear at that point. But Pistol Packing Mama was another one of his great dogs. Spinner, Ferguson's Lad, Ferguson's Mac, Ferguson's Diesel, Ferguson's Meter. I mean, the list goes on and on. In the same way, when you go back and look at Vaughn's dogs and John's dogs, I mean, John had, Plott's Lip, then you had the all of Vaughn's dogs and Scott and gosh, I'm drawing a blank here all of a sudden, but there's so many of them. But
there's just a ton of them.
Yeah, Plott's Dan, Plott's Scott, Buck, Fanny, Mike, Lady, Drum, Mac, Sunshine, Stroll. It just goes on and on, But Plott's Scott and Plott's Dan were 2 of the first registered. And of course, if you go back and look again, we talked about Boston Tig's influence. When you look at all the dogs registered in 1946 with the UKC, really all 5 of those, all the dogs came directly from these guys in one form or fashion. And most of them came from Vaughn or John, or from people who had got dogs from Vaughn or John. So these guys played a huge role, I think, in getting the dog registered in 46 and then continuing, because Vaughn didn't die until 79. John died in 59. Gola died in 62. Crockett didn't die in 96. So these guys played a huge role in continuing really through the most part or better part of the 20th century.
Yeah.
In still raising the dogs and taking on, proteges or young guys. You guys know Andy Blankenship, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And great guy, wonderful guy. And Crockett, Andy knew Crockett personally because Crockett lived not too far from him, and Crockett identified, Andy as being the finest young bear hunter he'd ever seen. which
Wow.
coming from Crockett he threw around compliments about like somebody throwing around hubcaps, and
Yeah.
he for him to say that about Andy, and of course he had another great quote about bear hunting. He said, bear hunting was not a sport for everybody. It took a special person that could stay with their dog and do justice to their dog, because he
Yes, sir.
believed a lot of his hunting was going on before the time of tracking collars and that sort of thing. So he believed when you turn a dog loose, you better be behind it the whole way.
I believe
So,
Mr. Andy still thinks that too, because my
Yeah.
legs. It's been just 2 seasons later, and they still haven't hardly recuperated. But I tell you what, if I'm ready to go with him anytime he gets
Yes.
ready, buddy. I
Yes.
tell you,
there is no finer person than Andy Blankenship, no better hunter. And it's interesting too, and Andy's one of them. Frank Meffin was a dear, dear friend of mine, and
yes,
he wrote for Full Cry for 50 some years, and he started the Meffin Award back in 1955, and today it still remains the longest running big game award given to Plott enthusiasts in the big game world. And when he died, he asked that I keep carried on for him, and I have since, I guess, before he died. For 2 years before he died, we started it, and I had been doing it now, I guess, since 2006 or 7, sometime around then. But anyway, but Andy was one of those every one of these guys that I just mentioned were Meffin Award winners, the Big Five, of course. And of course, Andy's a former Meffin Award winner too. So
wow,
pretty much when you look at that list of Meffin Award winners, it's amazing. I mean, it's like a hall of fame of Plott hound breeders and Plott hound hunters that are just a class apart from anybody else you can imagine. So, and Andy's one of those guys. I mean, he's just a great human being, and a great hunter and great dog guy too. He's just so knowledgeable and so smart, and just a good guy. I just think the world of him.
yeah, he is.
But all these guys too. I mean, you look at Taylor had Andy as one of, and there was Rex Sudreth who lived over in Cherokee County. Real interesting character. He and Crockett were good buddies. So all these guys had, at one time, Rex had 125 dogs at his place over near Murphy. I
Man,
mean, it's
that's a
crazy.
lot of dogs.
Oh, too many, but he had them. But Bud Line was somebody that kind of fell in with Vaughn Plott early on, and Bud knew Gola Ferguson too, and Kid, and but he and Vaughn just really hit it off, and really thanks to it's really Bud that we can thank. Of course, Bud's passed away too. He was a personal mentor of mine, but Bud was really responsible for keeping the bloodlines and the pedigree that Vaughn had established and keeping those records. Because, like I said, Vaughn was barely literate. So, thanks to Bud and Larry Plott, Vaughn's grandson to a lesser degree, and Bill Plott, Vaughn's son, also played a role in that too. But all those guys were really instrumental in keeping Vaughn's bloodlines going. And of course, we still raise those dogs today ourselves, so we're proud of that. I mean, we can take our 7-generation pedigree and go right back to the first dogs registered in '46.
Mm.
So
Wow.
we're real proud of that.
Yeah, that's something to be proud of. I mean, that's there's not. I don't know many people that could say that, especially 7 generations at all on much of anything.
Well, and for us, like I said before, I think I said it again on this show before, but I'll say it again. I mean, I'm not taking one iota of credit for that. It was something that was handed to us, and I look at it just like Ira Jones and Andy Blankenship and I've talked about before. It's just something that's ours not to mess up. We don't want to.
There you
It's
go.
something we inherited and something that we were fortunate enough to be a part of. So, it's like the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it.
That's right.
So, I think that's a problem a lot of people run into. A lot of people try to reinvent the wheel. especially young guys coming in the sport. They think, well, I just want to make my name out here. And, Crockett was smart enough to see it. Kidd was smart enough to see it. Charles Gant, who was another later day, a really big name. Those guys knew that if you go get into this thing and really wanted to change something, or I don't necessarily mean to change it, but if you wanted to just tweak it a little bit, you need 25 years. You just better go in and say, okay,
Yep.
I'm going to have to put 25 years of my life if I want this bloodline to be what I want it to be. And not many people are willing to do that. So
that's right. It takes 10 years minimum just to, just to really be hooked into it, and that's just on some of the stuff that we've messed with. It's not on the same scale as those guys by no means. But I've got dogs that I've put, a solid 15 years in a program, and for somebody to jump in there and do that, my hat's off to them, but let me know how it turns out in 15 to 20 years.
Amen, brother. I think I may have told this before, but I'll say it again. I've seen so many, and I'm not knocking young guys. We need young guys. I want you guys are examples of that, but we need more guys coming in that have the right attitude and the right mindset, because so many of these guys come in just really looking to make a name. I want to be the guy that killed more bears than anybody else. I want to be the guy that I just want to be I'm looking at kill total. I'm not really looking at how good my dogs are or how they originate and everything else. You don't do that. So, or I don't. And so I think, like you said, I think you've got to have that mindset of commitment, because, and we talked about this before too. It's just simple science. I'm no genetics expert, but I have people all the time tell me, well, I got the same dogs as you. I started out with Von Plott bloodlines 25 years ago. And I'm like, oh, good. What happened after that? And they said, well, I got that dog and it was really great. So I found this other dog over here that was really great, and it was another bloodline. So I just bred them together, and then I found another one and I bred it. And I was like, well, guess what? The first time you lost half of it, the third time you lost the rest of it.
We talked about that before. I think I've made the analogy of there's 3/4 gone out of $1.
Yeah, exactly.
You ain't got nothing. You ain't got much left.
Yeah,
and it don't take long to breed it out. It really don't.
No,
you can have it.
No.
A couple generations back, and we've heard it, especially in the bulldog world. You would hear people, a famous dog would be Jeep, and they're like, "Oh, he's off a Jeep." I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, he's off a Jeep? And they're like, well, he's Jeep blood. And it's like 9 generations ago.
Yeah.
Like, buddy, there ain't no more Jeep in that than it is in me,
No.
But like you said, some of these young guys that are coming up, and whether they're 16 years old or 36 years old or whatever, if they can keep that bloodline and put their time and effort into it, it'll produce. It's already, it's been proven for decades. Yep. All they got to do is just keep it down the same path.
Yep.
And it'll work.
And I think that's the key right there, is I think you've got to keep on that same path. Because like I said, so many people let that ego get in the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I got to do something. And I'm not saying you don't have to bring in some fresh blood every now and then. It doesn't hurt to bring in a little twist, maybe every 10, 15 years or whatever. But my point is that when you got something that's working, leave it alone.
Yeah, why mess with it?
Yeah, I told this story last time, but it bears repeating. I saw some guy blowing hard over at Plott Fest one year about his strict standards. He had the highest standards of anybody around, and he'd have 4 or 5 litters a year, and if they had 4 or 5 litters a year and had produced 20 pups, man, he might keep 2 of them, but he'd have to just cull the rest of them. he looks over it, and I'm just not, I'm like, I'm trying to be nice. I'm not going to say nothing, And he goes, that's a mark of a good breeding program, ain't it, Bob? And he looks over at me. I said, you asking me?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. And he said, yeah. What do you think about it? I said, well, I think it's just the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what do you mean? I said, I think it's a mark of a terrible breeding program.
There you go.
Yeah. I
No,
said,
100%. I agree with you. First off, with a guy saying and having to talk about how strict his program is, if he's got to tell you that, then it's probably not that strict anyway.
amen, man.
Somebody else
Amen.
somebody else to talk for him.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's kind of like, you see, I got a lot of buddies of mine, retired special forces guys, and, you don't see those guys walking around blowing hard all the time, but they can kill you in about 2 seconds,
Yes, that's right.
And so it's not the guy that's walking around bragging about it all the time or talking about it all the time. It's the guy that's just kind of sitting back there listening and keeping to himself and trying to do what's right. And I think that's what's so important, because it's like I was trying to get across to that guy. I was like, because Bud Lyon preached it to me, Von Plott preached it to me. It was like, once you get it dialed in, and you guys have got what you got dialed in too. So I mean, I'm talking about y'all too.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get it dialed in, you ought to have good success. I mean,
Exactly.
that I'm not saying you shouldn't cull, you should, but that cull rate should be,
A lot. Yeah, you shouldn't have to cull nowhere
minimum.
near as much.
Yeah,
Exactly.
95% of the dogs you breed should be producing something positive,
Without a doubt.
and other 3, 4, 5%. Okay, that's just part of the lottery, just the way it works sometimes. But man,
I like how you put that with, saying 90%, 95% even. I've talked to a lot of people, and over the years, it seems like they say, well, if you got 50% turnout rate, then you're way above the game. And I'm a lot of times I don't even offer argument at all, because, like I said, I'm not a genius by no means. And I'm not a great dog man at all. I want to be one when I grow up. But
I'm not either.
You know what I'm saying? But if somebody like me can have a breeding program, and out of all the years that I've done it, I've only had just a few litters, honestly, because I only breed for myself. And
Right.
I've only had to cull just less than a handful of dogs.
Right.
That the 50% thing for me would be horrible. To me, it would be horrible.
It is horrible. I mean, and that's just a fact. I mean, and I think part of it is just poor breeding practice. I think there's 2 or 3 contributing factors to that.
I think they're breeding a lot, though. I mean, I think that's one of the big factors there. Like they're turning out a bunch of litters.
Well, sometimes, but I think even the guys are just doing 1 or 2 litters a year, I think it comes down to, one, they're not really paying any attention to their pedigrees or their paper or their roadmap.
Uh-huh.
I have guys all the time tell me, "Oh, well, papers don't mean nothing in the woods. Don't tell me about your 7 generations." I'm like, look, man, have you ever heard me say that a paper kills anything or a paper hunts anything? No, it does not. I agree 120%. It does not. But it is your best roadmap possible to get you where you want to go. Because if you go back and look, and I've got a whole book of them right here. You go back and look at the old breeders. They had these food companies put out this thing. It looks like a leather bound Bible, but it's a 3-ring notebook.
Yep.
Folds out that shows you 5, 6, 7 generations.
Will you send me a picture of that?
Yeah.
Whenever you get a chance or whatever, the handwritten stuff. I love that. Because that's like you said, these guys that are saying papers don't do this and don't do that. Same way. I agree. Papers don't win nothing. I mean, they're a good roadmap, like 100%. You got to have some kind of basis, or you don't have a program. Right. I don't know how many old timers that I know that their papers were literally a spiral notebook or leather bound book, like you're talking about. It looks like one of the big leather checkbook kind of deals. And
Yeah, there was I can't think. Yeah,
it's the same. It's got to be the same kind of thing.
yeah,
And
it was a dog food company. I can't think of the name of it right now, but
okay,
that they put it out, and like I
yeah.
said,
But they kept up with what they were breeding. They didn't just let them just
of course
breed
they
and say,
did.
okay, that's what it is and whatever. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's so contradictory to me when people say
Well,
that. You know, it just, I don't know. It
well
gets kind of bothers
no,
me.
no, you're 100% correct. And the other thing I would add to that is keep in mind this has got nothing to do with PR papers or purple ribbon or personal record or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
with some kennel club, which is all fine, well and good. I got nothing against that. But this is before the kennel club. This is before the dogs were registered. They were still keeping those records because they knew they wanted to know what they had
This is the
and
dog.
what
That's
it
the
had come
history
from.
of the dog.
Right. And nobody's smart enough, I don't care who you are, to remember that,
No.
particularly when you're going. I mean, yeah, if you sort of remember the dog you got this year and some pups from it, you may can remember its sire and dam. But when you're talking about putting 25 years into something, investing time into something, a genius can't remember all those names.
I
So,
agree.
and that's what I was talking about with Isaiah Kidd a while ago. That was one thing about his wife. She was keeping all those records for him. Bud Line was keeping all those records for Bone. I mean, I've got actual count. I was going through some stuff one time with Vaughn Plots, and there was I saw his calendar page, like 1938, 48, something, January calendar page. I thought, why in the world would he just keep that? And I picked the calendar up page and looked at it, just about threw it away. And I flipped it over, and it was a handwritten pedigree on the back of it.
I'll be dang.
And so he just used something for scrap paper and just wrote it down. And like I said, some of these pedigrees, like the one I'll send you the picture of, it's got the first, sire and dam, then the ones behind that, ones behind that, ones behind that, stretching out 7 generations. And when it gets all the way to the very back line, it don't even have the dog's name. It just has family names like Cable Bitch or Cable Stud or Blevins Stud or
Wow.
Blevins Jip and that sort of stuff. So again, they were keeping that information not because they were trying to win points at the dog show,
Yeah,
or
there was
not
no
because
such thing then.
uh,
They were just keeping up with it. Yeah.
yeah, and they knew. So again, that goes back to my point. You're looking at 3 different things, I think. First of all, you're looking at the importance of having that pedigree as your roadmap. 2, you're looking at the time that takes to go into that. I mean, because like you just said a while ago, man, you better be looking at 25, 30 years. And so nobody
Yeah.
can keep that kind of information in their mind. And if you're really going to be committed to doing it,
Yeah.
So, and then the third thing is just having that commitment to do it. And, I'll say this all the time. I know you guys believe in it too. It's not a coincidence that the best hunters have the best dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
I
you know,
mean,
I
there's a
mean,
reason why.
look at Andy. I keep going back to Andy, for example.
Yeah.
Andy's in them woods all the time, man. His
Yes.
dogs are getting out there. They're getting work.
Yes.
And so you can have all that pedigree and all that paperwork and everything and all the bloodlines right, but you got to get them out in the woods too. And
Without a
so,
doubt.
if you're doing those 3 things, you're going to be successful if you're willing to put the time in to do it and have the discipline to not get caught up in, oh my gosh, this is, it's just, I mean, even though, I've written books and all that stuff, this is not about me,
Yep.
this is not about me.
It's
This
about the
never was
dogs.
about me. I have never written a book about me. I've never written a book that mentioned me in it. So
That's a hard thing. I think, especially when, I would say somebody like of your stature that's been around and having that family name, and coming from, and having a breed like that tied to it, it's almost, it goes hand in hand. It's like, okay, well, that's Mr. Plott, of the Plott Hounds, but you're not making it about yourself.
no,
It's still the history of the Plott Hound. It's not the history of Bob Plott.
no,
It's the history of the Plott Hound, and it's when you get invested in that. And I did it with some terriers with a Yog Terriers and did it with a High Terrier. I did a 10-year program on the High Terriers, and it was almost to the point to where if I didn't put forth enough effort, I mean, I just felt like I was letting the dogs down.
Yeah.
I just felt, I was like, I got to do more. And we wouldn't tell anybody that I even had these dogs. I wasn't handing them out. I wasn't selling them, wasn't doing anything. That I was trying to get this breed the way I wanted it, what I thought would work the best. And sometimes, like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Once it got to the point where it wasn't broke, well, that's all I needed to do. Hey, rest of it, they can take care of the rest of that part.
Yep.
So,
and it takes discipline to do that.
Yes.
I mean, and I think that's one thing that's missing too sometimes is, like I say, everybody gets caught up in just that big name, that reputation, that building the big gun, noise. But you just got to be patient. You got to be willing to put the time in with it. You got to be able to put the time in studying your breed. You got to be able to put the time in with the dog. You got to be able to put the time in the woods. And we talked about this before, and I'll say this and shut up. You got to put the time in realizing that every dog ain't going to be the best dog in the world, but that don't make it the worst dog in the world either.
Amen.
I hear people all the time talking about, oh my God, that dog, he's not a great strike dog. Well, okay, maybe he's not, but maybe he's a good pack dog. Maybe he's a good trail dog. Find that. It's kind of like a football team. We talked about this before. You're building that offensive line to block for you, and they got that strong running back and that strong quarterback and wide receivers, and all together they make a good team. Well, it's the same thing with that strike dog's going to get out there and get that trail for you, and he's going to lead that pack, and then go pack of dogs to him. You get the tree. Maybe the strike dog's not as good a tree dog,
That 100%. And I learned something years ago from that same thing. What you're talking about is I wanted to have. They all had to be superstars.
You can't be.
And let me tell you what happened. I put 5 dogs on the ground. I was still hunting one dog at a time.
Yep.
I mean, they would be split up 5 different ways. They were not honoring each other. It was a nightmare, honestly. But now I had great.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. They were good. They were great dogs. But I didn't realize the importance of having a dog that fits in with another dog that complements him. Mate, like you said, I got a great strike dog. Well, this dog over here will stay right with him, step for step, every bit of the way once he gets it jumped.
And he just don't have as good a nose.
He just don't have quite enough. And then there's those other dogs that they're not going to leave the tree or the bay or whichever one, they're going to stay there. Even if that main strike dog, he might have got wore out and slacked back a little bit.
Yep.
Well, that other one, he's going to stay there. He's a stay put, hard dog, and I hope a lot of younger listeners, and they're not necessarily young by age, but younger dog men and women would be listening to this, so they know that just because this one dog isn't on par with your superstar doesn't mean that you just got to cull it right off the bat.
No.
Make them work together.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And again, it goes back to what we talked about before, spending time with that dog to recognize that.
Yeah.
Von Plott, when he had a litter of puppies, he would just sit on the porch and study them.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be out there. He just watched everything they were doing, and people say, "What are you doing, old man?" He'd be like, studying these dogs, and he could tell which one was aggressive, which one was real attentive, which one was kind of lackadaisical, whatever. And he could and then of course when he got out there and they got old enough to where he could put him out in the woods and stuff, he could pay more attention to it. But that's the key, man, right there. And so many people too. I mean, and I think you'll agree with this as well. Everybody's looking for that once in a lifetime dog. We all are.
Sure.
But that's it. Why do they call it a once in a lifetime dog? That's what it is. It's not. It doesn't mean that you have 7 pups in a litter. All 7 pups are going to be once in a lifetime dogs.
That's right. That's right.
So I mean, but that doesn't mean that all 7 of them are bad either.
There you go.
So I mean, so I think that's what sometimes. Our own intelligence hurts us, our lack of hurts us, because I mean,
Sure.
We've got to be smart enough to realize that and recognize that and put that piece in place. Like I say, it's just like a football coach, man. You don't put that 350-pound lineman out at wide receiver, you know.
That's right.
You got him in the trenches there, barging through, creating holes for that running back that weighs 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that can run the 4.40. So, that's what you're looking at, man. I mean, I've seen dogs that they're just so agile and so fast, and but they didn't have a good nose. But boy, nothing, darn deer couldn't outrun them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, you just got to be smart enough to recognize that, not let your ego get involved in it, and realize that, myself, I've been super, super lucky to have 2 or 3, maybe 3 of what I consider were just all-time great dogs. But, that don't mean the rest of them hadn't been good dogs. They have been. And I think when we name some of those dogs, look at the list. I know some of the dogs I named you for the Big Fives dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Those were their best dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But good Lord, how many dogs they breed over that 25, 50, 60-year period?
And there's no telling.
So, when you look at that, it's they weren't, excuse me, as good as those guys were. They weren't, just cranking out superstar. But Von Plott said itself, Bloodline said itself, they believe that if you had it dialed in, and it may take you 25 years to get it dialed in, but once you got it dialed in, their success rate, they felt like, was 98%. Mm-hmm. They felt like 95, 98% of the pups that you breed should be serviceable dogs, at least serviceable.
Yeah.
And hopefully some a lot better than that. It's up to you to figure out which ones can be better than that and how you can help make them better than that. There's things you can't teach. You can't teach nose.
That's right.
You can't teach grit. You can put them in situations to improve that some. You can increase stamina, because obviously by getting the exercise and running them.
Yes, sir.
But there's just some things. I hear people all the time, well, I'm going to train this dog to do this and do that. And I'm like, look, the only thing you're going to train a dog, in my opinion, you're going to train it to come to you. You're going to train it to get in the truck. You're going to train it to get in the box, get out of the box. You're going to train it to heel. And that's about it. Everything else, it's genetically bred to be able to do. You can't teach nose. You can't teach the other stuff that it needs to know. You have to. That's where that pedigree comes in play.
Exactly. And a friend of ours, he said it one night. We were doing a podcast, and he was talking about having a big oak tree. Yep. He said from the very beginning, that acorn was all it was ever going to be.
Yeah.
No matter what, even from an acorn, it was going to be the biggest, strongest 300-year-old oak tree, even when it was an acorn, because it was already there.
Exactly.
And that was one of the best sayings that I think, he's like, this acorn is all it's ever going to be. And it's just how you look at it and how you interpret it.
That's a great analogy.
As Pat Lewing said that.
That's good for him, man, because that's spot on. Shook Vance said one time he was one of Smithdale's brush busters, and there was some reporters and stuff were watching these dogs and just talking about, how amazingly well trained they were, and Shook was being sarcastic. He just said, I don't know what secret it is or what kind of secret medicine this Plott boys got for them dogs, but they sure know how to get them to do it, and he was just making a joke, because he was like, there ain't no secret medicine, there's no secrets to it. It's just a matter of following that right pedigree, putting the time in with the dogs, getting them in the woods, and having the discipline and the good sense to look at them and discern what their strengths are and utilize those strengths. And it's like you do with your kids, or again, I keep going back to the football team. You put them in a position to succeed. Don't put them in a position to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And and again, like I said, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have a bad one every now and then. You will, and that's you got to deal with that however you choose to deal with it. But these people sit there saying, "Oh yeah, man, I'm 50%. That's good." No, it's not.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Because I mean, you'd have to. I mean, in order to have a decent pack of dogs and a couple of extras, you'd have to breed, 25. You'd have to have 25 head of dogs just to run, 10 or 12. That's just that's the mathematics of it. And it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, why would you have to have that many dogs if you're not going to turn out dogs? You got something wrong in your mixture.
Amen. And I had a guy call me not too long ago, and I made him mad, but that was okay. He proceeds to tell me, how he likes to boar hunt, he likes to big cat hunt, he likes to bear hunt, he likes to coon hunt, and pretty much anything that's got 4 legs, he's hunting it. I'm like, okay, good for you, man. That's great. What's your bloodlines? Well, that's the thing. That's where I disagree with you boys on. I have a big kennel, and I have strictly coon dogs, strictly bear dogs, strictly boar dogs, strictly cat dogs. And he goes, and they don't hunt nothing else because I won't tolerate it. If they go out and run something else besides what they're hunting, I get rid of them. And I just started laughing.
Yeah.
I said, what do you do for a living? He said, what do you mean? I said, what I mean is, I said, you got that many dogs specializing in that many things. How do you have time to hunt them all?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have, that's what I always liked about Plott hounds. You got that multi-purpose capability where these dogs can do so many different things, and that's what I want. I want a dog. If I want to run a coon, I want to run a coon. If I want to run a bear or a cat or whatever, a boar, whatever, it's going to run it. But, granted, we're going to make choices. We talked about this before. I prefer bear hunting, so that's what I'm going to focus on. But, if one of my bear dogs takes off at running a boar, I ain't going to get mad about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's same with us. We like a multi-purpose dog. We're generally going to put out on good hog sign, and that's your job, is to put them on what you want them to run.
Exactly.
That's my job. Be
smart enough. Again, it's like we talked about before. Put them in position to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find where that sign is. You got to put them in that position to strike that trail.
That's right.
Whether you're got a bait pile out there and you got them coming to that bait pile, so they're coming. So, okay, so you can start from there. I don't like that, but I know a lot of people do.
Yep.
But so yeah, that's, you just summed it up right there.
And I think if a lot of people would just keep that in mind, I think a lot of folks just kind of overcomplicate it or overthink it. It's them dogs will tell you what they want to do most of the time. In my experience, they're, like you said, if you got a dog that tends to, if you put him in good hog sign and he tends to keep going off over here and maybe wanting to tree a coon at night, well, he likes a coon a little better, of course,
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be mad at the dog because he's a dog.
Right.
Now, if I don't want that in my pack, if I'm only a one species person, well, then I'm going to get a specialist. I'm not going to have a dog that can be even used for, multi-purpose.
Right.
To me, that would be crazy. Then it'd be like, well, I just need a dog that only does one thing.
But see, I don't see how you could do justice. I agree with you on that, by the way, but I don't see how you can do justice to sit there like this guy was talking about having, 7 different kennels and 7 different dogs, 7 different types of hunts. Well, I understand there's only hunting season for certain things, certain times of year, but you still got to have, you can't kill bears, but a limited window, but you're still training and working those dogs the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And same way you're doing with boar. Of course, you can hunt boar about any time now, but what I'm saying, so it's you got to give them the work, and you got to be smart enough to realize what they do well, and put them in that position to succeed time and time again. And that's where you come in. I mean, it goes down to this: dogs are an alpha breed. They are going to be the dominant pack leader, or you're going to be the dominant pack leader.
Yep.
And so, you as the owner or the breeder, once you decide to start hunting that dog, you're going to have to make that choice. It's kind of like when you have a kid and you decide you're going to let the kid tell you what to do, or you're going to tell the kid what to do.
Amen.
And it's the same way with the dog. I mean, you don't, and I'm not talking about being abusive or being mean, but you got to have the discipline to let that dog know that, hey, whoa, we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We do this. And by letting that dog know that, you reinforce good habits.
Without a doubt.
You reward those good habits. You give them a treat for doing the right thing. You don't have to beat the crap out of them to show them something's wrong.
Yeah.
So you don't lead by fear or intimidation, but they got to understand there's a boss.
Mm-hmm.
They got to understand that there's an alpha male in that breed, whether it's a human or whether it's dog, or an alpha female for that matter. I mean, you don't have to be a male, but you're going to have a pack leader. And if you don't have that pack leader, you ain't going to get nothing done.
Amen. No doubt about it.
Well, fellas, I've talked way longer than I should have, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
It's been rolling good, no doubt.
Good.
It's been wonderful. We got a good about an hour and a half on there. Man, if we can keep them about that length right there, I think we'll be in good shape.
Well, feel free to trim it down as you want to, because I mean, there's I'm sure there's things on there I've repeated and whatever. So
we don't care. Nobody.
You ain't gonna hurt.
They want to listen to you.
You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. I mean, it ain't gonna.
Well, Mr. Plott, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing this with us.
Yes.
Thank you for being part of Dixie Doggers in our podcast, and thank you for letting us be a part of Strike and Stay. I mean, I'm really, really, really digging this stuff, and we've got a lot of good feedback already. So we'll just keep them coming, man.
Well, again, I can't thank you guys enough, Nate and Joy, for all y'all doing and for allowing me to do this, because it's certainly giving me a platform that I need right now, number one.
Yes.
And number two, I want to close just one last thing by saying that, I want this. I'm hope you're getting some good feedback from it, and I'm hoping that the people who are listening, I used to say this when I was writing for Strike and Stay, or writing in Full Cry. I want people to be their program.
Yes, sir.
If you got a question about something, you got a concern about something, you disagree with something I said, I'm cool with that. Just let's talk about it. Put out there why you disagree with it and why your feelings are for that, and we'll try to address it. And if I'm not I can't figure it out, I'll find somebody that can. And so that's, to me, it's all about learning. I'm learning something every day, and when you get to the point where you can't learn, you're dead. And so I want this to be useful for you guys. When the day it comes when it's not useful to you guys, y'all need to tell me, and I'll get out of your way. But so it's as long as your listeners and y'all find it of benefit, then I want to be here for you.
We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bob.
Well, that'll work. And we'll just be thinking about what's going to happen on the next one, because I'm excited for it already.
Oh, yes.
Sounds good, my friends.
All right,
y'all
buddy.
Take care.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. That's Mr. Plott. That's pretty good. I'm really enjoying this, being able to sit and listen to a lot of the history and of the Plott Hound. I've, like I said, over the years, I've had a few, and I've always been kind of intrigued by the breed, and I've refrained from just going crazy and getting a bunch of Plott hounds and going apeshit with them over the years. But I've hunted with some really good ones, and they're a phenomenal breed. There's no doubt about it. And so, for you people out there that are diehard Plott hound enthusiasts, y'all make sure to check out Mr. Plott's books. He's got, I think, a half a dozen books that he's written. They'll be Plott Fest, and I mean, there's tons of things to do that to be involved in with the Plott Hounds or the Plott Hound Association. So thank y'all for listening. And if y'all have any questions or anything like that we can help you with or pass them on to Mr. Plott, y'all can holler at me or Nate or Mr. Bob. Email him, check it out, and we'll hash it out on here.
Oh, yes.
If y'all have a disagreement or something like that, we ain't gonna argue with you, but we can debate stuff. And like he said, if you disagree with something, let us know. Hey, y'all keep on listening, and we're gonna keep on talking. Until the next time, we'll see y'all.
Thank you. Hope y'all enjoyed that episode. Stay tuned for our new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. For questions, advertising, or just to chat, email DixieDoggers01@gmail.com.